Welcome back to the Crochet Crowd. I'm your host Mikey. Today I'm going to show you a generic video on how Fair Isle is done in crochet when you're going in a round. So whether it's a hat or in this case it's a cowl. So what we have here is pops of color that are being dragged underneath the stitches, not behind, but it's actually buried right inside the stitch itself. And this stitch that is typically used for this concept is called a split single crochet. Could also be called the waistcoat stitch, and I've heard it being called the shadow stitch. So what happens with these kind of patterns is that they can write it out, but they can also provide a diagram. And so depending on your color choices, if you look really carefully here, I'm not sure you'll see it, but it's actually diamond shapes being filled in here. And this reminds me very much of a reindeer kind of freckles. So when you're looking at these kind of ideas, they're going to be providing to you a chart just like this. And this particular first one is a repeat of 4 stitches. So after you get the first 4 done, you go back and then go. And so we're going to read this chart from right to left. The designer may have you read the chart the other way. They'll let you know on the particular pattern itself. This one here, so this one here is the rainbow, or sorry, is the reindeer freckled cowl. And this one here was the other one that is a random stitch work that you can see that transitions from one color and it just works its way through and goes through. So it appears when you're wearing something like this, especially in this design, that it's very random, but in actual fact, it's very methodical. And this is a repeat of 10 stitches. So after you get the first 10, and it's easy to do. So let's go through some tips on reading these to speed your way through, and then I'll show you how to do the stitch and carry your yarn. The easiest way to do this is to look at the number of boxes. So you see on row number 2 that there's 3 of these color here. So basically you know that it's 4 stitches all together. So you have 1 and then 2 and then the next 3 are the other color, and then it goes back to 1. So you want to look for the easy repeats like this. So row number 5, it's basically 1 color for 1 stitch, 1 color for the next, 1 and 1. So it's just alternating all the way around. So you're looking at how things are grouped together in order to make sense. This one here is having 10 stitches. And if you look here, once you count your first ones that you have right here, which is 6 stitches, 7 and 8 will be this color. And then when you take into account for this and these other 6, there's going to be 8 in a row before this goes through. So what I do is I get my first repeat done, and then I say, okay, the next 8 are going to be this color, and then it's a 2, 8, and 2, and I keep doing that all the way around, and then I want to finish off. Like knitting, I always like to do this stuff so that it's a continuous round, so that I don't have any slip stitching that is involved in the cowl itself. So when you zoom out, you don't see any of the slip stitching because there is none. So what I need to do is mark the last stitch of the row, and then every time I get that last stitch done, I move it on up so that I can keep an eye on it, so that I know exactly when I go all the way around. So what we're going to do now is just show you a brief demonstration on how this is done, how to carry your yarn, and easy ways to be able to manipulate it. My first tip for you is when you're using 2 colors or more, position the balls so that they're not sitting beside each other when they're coming into your hand. Be a little bit different. So I always put one ball just almost to my 11 o'clock if you are right-handed, or it's going to be 1 o'clock if you're left-handed. Then the other one, then I put it to my 9 o'clock, but if you're right-handed, it'll be 3 o'clock. And so what happens is that when you're jumping, because it's coming from 2 different directions, it's easy just to let one go, pick up the next one, where if they're coming from the same here, it's really kind of hard to be able to manipulate the 2 because they're not separated. So that's my first tip. For today's tutorial, I'm using the Caron All Day Wool, 80% acrylic, 20% wool. And then what this is using a size 6 super bulky weight, and I will be using an 8mm size L crochet hook. For the waistcoat stitch or split single, I always find it's easier when I'm using this stitch in a larger format versus a smaller. So I've struggled with this stitch in the past, and I realized that it's much easier when the yarn is thicker like this. So these particular cowls that I did can be done in less than 2 hours. Your first step is to look at your chart and decide what color that you would like to do. So you'll have to see A is sand dune and B is primary. So what I would do for myself is that you're going to get the yarn ball and write the letter. So if it was going to be A, it's going to be sand dune, write the letter A on it, and then the other one, write the letter B. And so if you're jumping around, it's much easier for you to see that. So if you ever get confused, just write it on the pattern. So let's move on and let's start our first row. So our first round shows a solid color. So we're not going to introduce the second color until round number 2. So this means that we're going to cast on or create your first chain with one color, and then we're going to do that first one before proceeding to row number 2. So put the second yarn away for now, and we're going to revisit that. Just create a little bit of a tail. Don't be too crazy about it. This yarn is very thick, so you don't want to waste as much as possible. So you want to keep it nice and fresh and good to go. So in this case, this particular one here was a chaining of 48. This is the reindeer freckles one. And so you're just going to chain like you normally would. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can go all the way to 48. If it's another pattern, just do what it says for the chain work. And the other one was chaining of 50, and I'm going to create one more pattern with this before I move on. So just chain the number and meet me back here. So if you don't want to turn your chain in any weird way, just take your hook out, put it into the very beginning chain, and then just keep on going. So we got 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and you can go all the way to the number, and once you have that number you can just pull it through, and this chain will not be turned in any weird way. So I'll see you at the end of the round. I now have my 48 on here, so what I'm going to do is just yarn over, pull through and through. And if you did it the way I'm doing it here, there will not be any weird twist. Because this is thicker yarn, you always see me going in the back hump of the chain if you're a regular follower of mine. In this, because it's thicker yarn, you do not want to do that. You want to always maintain making sure 2 stitches stay on top. So 2 of the strands stay on top when you're doing the first round. So we're going to begin our first round, and that's going to be starting next. So because I'm going to do a continuous round, I do not want to have a chain 1 that will start this. So right where the first one is coming out of, right here, I'm just going to apply a single crochet. And when you do that, make sure 2 strands stay on top of the hook and just single crochet. So there should be only 1 underneath. So then just keep on going around and single crochet and making sure only 1 strand stays underneath. So just be consistent about it, because this is going to be a visual edge when you're wearing it. So try to make sure you're always getting the same element of the chain. So just go all the way around. We're going to want to make sure that we count our stitches, because if everything is reliant on a stitch repeat, you're going to want that exact number. And I'll be right back in a moment. So now that I have my 48 on here and I have double checked, I am just going to pull up a loop. I have not joined it to the very beginning one yet. Okay, so I'm not worried about that so far. So what I'm going to do is insert my hook underneath this last stitch, and I'm just going to grab a spare piece of yarn and I'm just going to pull it through. So every time I get to the end of the round, this yarn will be there. So when I get my next round done, I'm just going to feed it up through so that I can see where my ending rows are going to be. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to make sure that this is not twisted in any weird way. So you just got to lay it down and just kind of follow the edging and making sure that it's okay. Okay, so just up. Okay, and it's right there. So just follow the edge up and back around, make sure it stays on the top of this side. So what we need to do is go back to the diagram and review what is next, because what our first stitch is going to be may not necessarily be the color that's currently on the loop, and I'll explain that. In the repeating then, it has 1 of the other color and then 3 of the next, so 1 and then 3. So we know that. So we know that this is going to be the other color, so we need to make sure that we look at this and realize that we have to frog out a portion of the last stitch out. So the loop that's on the hook is actually the roof of the next stitch. Okay, so if this is not changed to the other color, it means that the base of the stitch will be the one color, but then the top of the roof will be something completely different. So what we need to do is when there's a color change, we're just going to frog out so that the final 2 loops that are here is going to be the other color. Okay, so I'm just going to create a loop. And so once this color is joined to this project, it's going to stay with the project for the duration of it. So we put it on and we finish with this, and now this is the roof of the next stitch, which happens to be the very first stitch that we're going to need. So sometimes at the end of the rounds they could be a different color, or it could be the same color leading into the first stitch in the round. And so what we want to do is that we want to start the sequence, and we need to do what is called as a split single crochet, and it's always a little harder the very first time you're ever doing it. And let me point out the anatomy of the stitch and where you're going. Now if you go into regular single crochet, it's usually right here, and you're going to notice is that there's a gap underneath it. Okay, so it's normally when we go into a stitch, it's right here. And you'll notice that the Fair Isle is not going to appear when you use that part of the stitch. And what you need to do is that there are legs on the single crochet. See how these are two? These are the legs of this stitch. You want to jam your hook in between the legs of that one, and it's going to be those legs that create the image of the Fair Isle concept. The very first one is always harder to find, and so it's right here. Okay? So if you stay up here, you're going to end up with regular single crochet, and if you go between the legs, straight on back, therefore you have the Fair Isle. So that's the anatomy, and so all stitches all now going forward are going to go in between the legs of each of the stitch and not stay towards the top of the stitch like I typically would. Let's begin. So let's begin our first stitch. We're going to go in the legs of the first one, and we can't forget about that other yarn that's leading to the other yarn ball, and this is why I have it coming in from two different directions. And so I want to lay it down near the behind of the stitch here, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through. Okay, and then I'm going to yarn over, pull through too. See, and you see this is the Fair Isle happening. So then what is the problem here? The problem is that the next three stitches are the other color. So the roof of the next stitch will be the wrong color. So you have to be considerate that you have to think about a stitch ahead. Okay, so you just, if that happens, just pull out and use the other color and pull through. So now you're going to have this color and you're going to drag it in behind. So you're just going to split the legs of the stitch. So we know the next three are going to be single crochet, split single crochet. So we have 1, 2, and 3. The very first time going in the first round like this is always the hardest, just so you know. So we know that the next stitch has to be this color, so we have to stop, let that yarn drop. We just want to just tighten this up a little bit, but not enough to change the shape of the project. And we're going to yarn over, pulling it through this, because the next stitch, the roof, is that color. So going into the next stitch with this new color, make sure that this is down on top of the line and behind. And if it doesn't, if this is not down on top, that will be loosely hanging behind, and it's not a great thing. So you're going to pull through, and we know this is only going to be one stitch, so we have to drop it and then grab the other one and pull through, because that's the roof of the next one. So we know the next three are this new color that it just changed to. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And we know that the next color has to be this. So on the very final, before you pull through, drop it, grab the new one, and pull through. And there's the roof. So I just don't pull too tight, just pull it taut. And then this is the roof of the next one. So we know it's just only going to appear one time. Drop it, get the next color. So you just got to make sure you're always bearing that other yarn. So when you turn it around, you should not have any loose strands hanging. So we have 3 of this. So we have 1, 2, and 3, and then it changes back. Once you get to understand this, you can actually manipulate and go back and change the colors really quickly once you get moving. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way around for this, and I'll be right back because row number 3 is slightly different, and I'll be right back. So I'm going to keep it in the video. I got towards the end and I realized that my sequence is out. So I had to look back and I should have like 3 stitches and then a color, 3 stitches and then a color. And when I looked back here, I realized that I had switched it too quickly. So if you ever have to frog, when you go to frog, it means to rip it, put the colors back into the same alignment. So I have this color going this way, this color is going this way, and therefore it won't be as tangled. Okay, so I'm going to frog back just to be able to correct myself. And so this does happen to the best of us. So don't rant and don't go on social media and complain about it either. Because that's not going to help you. And I'll be right back in a moment. Another tip I'm going to leave with you, you're going to notice that this is kind of spinning around. The other one, do not worry about it. It's not something you need to worry about. So technically I should be unspinning it and whatever, but if I just grab it from the side of the first spin, and you can do that constantly to get the spin out, then what's going to happen is that you can use that one here, and in behind, it's just going to work itself out, right? So don't worry about that so much. So you might be manipulating your yarn balls when in actual fact you can do it right then and there in your hands just by grabbing the yarn from a different perspective. Okay, so just look at, see that there's a spin there. So I'm just gonna look to see how I can unspin it and just grab the yarn from a different perspective and let it just kind of work itself out. No big deal, right? Okay, let's keep on going. So I'm coming up to the end of the round, and on the very last stitch that is marked right here, we're just going to move that up. So we're in the last stitch, and what we need to do is pay attention to the next color. And in this case, the next color going into the first round will be this one, but it's not always the same. But if it's the other color, then you're going to want to just switch your yarns now to pull through the final one to be ready. Before we go any further though, I want you to move up that stitch marker that is in position. So it's right here, move it on up. Just in case you ever lose your way, you can always frog things back and you know where the stop and the start of each of the rounds were. So now we're going to continue along in the pattern, and I need to show you another trick at this point. So in the pattern on round number 3, we're just a solid color. So we don't want to leave this other color just sitting out in limbo. And the reason for it is that you'll notice is that once you started bearing over top of those yarn strands, the stitch is much thicker. So if you don't carry that up underneath those stitches for the entire round, that round will be a lot more narrow unless the designer wants you to do that. So what you need to do is when you start your very next stitch going out, what we need to do is to just lay the second yarn over top. Okay, so we're just going to begin to the first one and just keep that secondary color just laying for the entire round on the back of it. So regular single crochet, if you go on the top here, these will peek through, but if you go between the legs, the yarn that you're carrying gets completely hidden. I really don't know why, it just happens, and that's why they tend to use this in a lot of ferrule techniques when it comes to crochet. So you're just going to use the same color, bang over top of the second one, and we'll be using that secondary color then on round number 4. And so this would be like the tips to get started, how to manipulate your yarn, and more. And I'll be right back. Another tip I'm going to leave for you here, so if we go in between, make sure that you're not up above here. So not just on the regular thing, but right here. This is a yarn strand that's being carried on the back side. So when you're going in to split, make sure that you keep that color that's kind of bleeding through out of the way and on top so it gets stuck underneath the stitches. So if you see that happening, it's because you're not deep enough in the splits of the stitches. I'll be right back. So when you get back all the way around, don't forget that last one to go in. Okay. And I looked at the diagram. We're going into this color for the first stitch, so we're going to keep it going. And before you go any further, see how I left this in front by accident? I want to make sure that that carried yarn always stays behind the work. So let's put that in. That was a mistake of my own. So we get the last one in, and this color is going on to the first stitch. So we want to move up the stitch marker once again. We want to re-examine the pattern, see where we are, and then you can keep on moving. So you're going to notice, because we've gone in a continuous round, that there's a step here. So when you go to weave this in, you're going to want to pull that strand over and just kind of match it as quickly, as closely as you can. So let's look at the diagram, see where we are. And finally, for today's example, we have row number 4. So we know the two first colors are the regular color, and then it's a pop of color right here. So what I do for myself is that once I do the sequence once and I get here, I know that there's 3 of these in a row and then the pop of color. So 3 and then the pop, 3 and pop. So just do the first sequence. After this one is in, then you can just count your 3s and then pop. And that's an easier way to remember than just remembering in groups of 4, just how you see. So it's just knowing that there's so many colors in between the pop. Now you've been carrying that color all the way around, so the first 2 stitches are going to be the main color. And then we know it's the pop. Okay, so it's the pop is the 3rd one. Okay, and I have to switch back because it's only going to appear one time, 1 stitch in a row. So what I do with my head, with my own head, is that I know that the pop of color, and then there's going to be 3 of these regular colors before the pop happens again. So I just count out to myself 1, 2, 3, and then pop the color, and then change it back. 1, 2, 3, and then a pop of color. So what I would do and recommend for myself is to know that when you're popping in this other color is just to kind of glance and see if it makes sense of where it's sitting. Okay, so you can see that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see in the next one we have the regular color, but then you see this is on the middle one here in between that. So you want to look for that just in case you're going all the way around and then something is misaligned. It means that something in the row is wrong, or in the row that you're currently making is that you've misdone your steps. So when you're done with this project, you just have to weave in your ends, and the colors will just naturally pop out on its own. Obviously the bigger color changes between the two are going to be really quite in your face, and that's something that you may enjoy, or you may appreciate it being more subtle, just like so. You just want to make sure you're always carrying that yarn in behind, and so that the front side here becomes a really beautiful intarsia, a beautiful Fair Isle look, and there's no yarn strands. So if you were to leave the yarn strands in behind and then pick them up whenever you need them, that's called stranding, and those strands can be really quite long depending on the sequence of your pattern. So I recommend always just carrying it on the tops of the stitches on the behind to make sure that it's well hidden and is ready for you when you're ready to change your color. So we could just drop it, it's ready to go, and so forth. Make sure that you're always going in between the legs of the stitch, because it'll be noticeable if you don't. Okay, you'll see that it looks weird. And so that's happened to me, and if it happens to you, you're in my club today. So thank you so much for joining me today, and hopefully you've learned something. Leave me a comment if you've learned something new, or if you have further tips for other people to pick up while you're here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.